Okay, good morning, everybody. I am so thankful you guys have all joined me for this little talk. I am Cindy. I'm a pediatric dietitian. I'm a certified lactation counselor, and I'm a mom of two. I have a 4-year-old and a 12-month-old. He just turned 12 months on the 22nd of March. So I am right here in the midst of the milk transition section with you. I am going to try to be super mindful of your time. The presentation is a little excessive because I'm super evidence-based and I want to make sure I'm giving you guys all the details and guidelines that you would need to make an educated decision on what you're going to do nutrition-wise with your kiddo once they turn 12 months. So that being said, I'm going to go through the presentation as quickly but efficiently with the information as I can. And then with the last 30 to 45 minutes, I would like to answer as many questions as I can. So if you need to hop off or leave early, please type your questions in the chat box and I will try to get to them all at the end and they'll be in this recording for you to review later. Okay, that being said, let's hop to it. So first things first, I am a healthcare professional, but I am not your healthcare professional. So I don't have any specific information on your individual child. So this is strictly for educational purposes and not for the treatment of medical conditions. I cannot provide individual recommendations. I can only provide general guidelines. And I cannot be held liable for any information that is taken from this course and used inappropriately or wasn't appropriate for that child. Always consult your physician or your dietitian for your individual child. So real quickly, let's talk about the nutrition goals at 12 months of age. So toddlers should be offered 3 balanced meals plus 1 to 3 snacks a day that include all food groups if able. Obviously, it might not always be able if our child has a food allergy. So these are just general guidelines. Calories and nutrients should be predominantly met from a healthy dietary pattern of age-appropriate, nutrient-dense foods and beverages. Added sugar should be avoided whenever possible. It's all about balance and moderation though. And we want to limit processed packaged foods that are high in sodium. Continued with the goals, responsive feeding practices should be encouraged. So we don't want to food bribe, pressure, force feed. This is endorsed by the American Academy of Pediatrics. We really want to establish a healthy relationship with food, a really joyful mealtime environment, and avoid any negative mealtime associations. 8 to 32 ounces of fluid intake is the general recommendation. This amount is very wide. 8 to 32 ounces is a big difference. And that's because it depends on what the child's height and weight is and their main beverage intake. So if they're still consuming breast milk, 24 ounces of breast milk a day, they're not going to need as much water. But if they're only drinking like 1 cup of cow's milk a day, then we need to make sure that we're giving them plenty of other fluid in the form of water, preferably just water. But that's why the differences in ounces is so different, because it just really depends on what the main fluid is. And are we having adequate wet diapers? How big is the baby? Because ounces of fluid is dependent on body weight. So that's why that recommendation is kind of vague. The dietary guidelines for Americans also recommend that children aged 12 through 23 months get 1.5 to 2 cup equivalents of dairy a day. So that includes cow's milk, yogurt, cheese, fortified soy beverages, and soy-based yogurt. So we're going to get into all that soon. And then bottles should begin being weaned around 9 to 12 months, with complete weaning from a bottle by 15 months of age. Straw cups, open cups, or sippy cups are recommended over bottles. Straw cups and open cups are preferred, but if we can't get our baby to drink out of a straw or an open cup, and we need to make sure we're meeting hydration needs, and sippy cups can definitely be utilized. So the big question, why is cow's milk recommended for toddlers? So to make it quick and simple, it's because it's high in many of the nutrients that toddlers may fail to get enough of in their diet, like calcium, vitamin D, vitamin B12, fat, and protein. So our first year of life, our kiddo triples in weight. is consuming insane amounts of breast milk or formula and solid foods and has a really ravenous appetite. And then after the first year of life, growth rate significantly declines. So that means portion sizes get smaller. Our kiddos may get a little bit more independent and prefer foods versus before they would eat whatever was given to them. So not only are they getting a little, I don't like to use the word picky, but it's the word that's coming to mind, a little bit picky with what they want to eat, they're also not gaining weight as fast. With the second year of life, they only gain around 5 pounds in that second year of life versus the first year of life, they triple in weight. So that being said, paired with decreased appetite and a little bit of picky eating, it's just a really easy way to make sure they're not nutrient deficient. So this is kind of a summary of the CDC guidelines for why cow's milk is recommended. And then I wanted to make sure that you guys see that it says cow's milk or fortified soy beverages, because those are the only two that we really have conclusive data and research on to show that they will meet a child's nutritional needs. We have long-term data that shows that and promotes good growth. But it also says that we don't want them to drink too much milk, because at 12 months of age, we want the majority of their nutritional intake to be met from solid food and not a beverage. So while it can be a helpful aid in meeting nutrients, we don't want it to overpower them meeting their nutritional needs from a solid food diet. Also, excessive amounts of cow's milk can contribute to iron deficiency anemia, so that's something we definitely want to avoid. And then this is the nutrition composition of cow's milk in 8 ounces so that you can kind of compare it to either a plant-based or breast milk or a toddler formula, which we'll get into later. This is the American Academy of Pediatrics statement on cow's milk. It says that we do not recommend whole cow's milk before 12 months of age due to the higher protein content and the risk for iron deficiency anemia. But then at 1 year, the 2 servings of dairy is recommended, which is about 16 to a maximum of 24 ounces of whole milk per day. We recommend whole milk. We don't recommend reduced fat or low fat because babies need that high fat content for proper brain development, central nervous system development. So we're not choosing a low fat or reduced fat dairy option. We're going to get into the recommendation for ounces too, because I don't really recommend more than 16 ounces unless we cannot meet their calcium needs in other ways. I really like around 16 ounces of cow's milk. So like I said, they're getting a bunch of nutrition from the cow's milk, but they're still meeting the majority of the nutrition from a solid food diet. So the 2 nutrients that are so easy, or the 2 nutrients that are so hard to meet if we're not using a fortified plant-based milk or cow's milk, is calcium and vitamin D. So these are the guidelines, the recommended dietary allowances. And as you can see, from 1 to 3 years of age, they need 700 milligrams of calcium, which is a ton, and 600 IUs of vitamin D. So below, you can see I kind of gave you an example. 8 ounces of breast milk only contains 79 milligrams of calcium and minimal vitamin D. So if a mom is taking a vitamin D supplement, her vitamin D levels are normal, she will be passing substantial amounts of vitamin D through her breast milk. But there's no way to really know that for sure, like exact concentration of the breast milk vitamin D, because it will depend on the mom if she's taking a supplement. So it's really hard. That's why we have to put minimal vitamin D, because if she's not taking a supplement in high dose, they will be getting minimal vitamin D from breast milk. So then we look at 8 ounces of cow's milk, and 8 ounces of cow's milk has almost 300 milligrams of calcium and 100 IUs of vitamin D. And then 16 ounces of cow's milk has 580 milligrams calcium, which is almost our total calcium needs for the day for a 1 to 3 year old, and then 200 IUs of vitamin D. So this is just 2 of the nutrients we worry about the most in kiddos, and cow's milk, as you can see, is an easy way to meet that. Do you have to provide cow's milk? Absolutely not. It is, like I said, an easy way to meet nutrient needs, but it is not essential, especially if your kiddo has a food allergy or family follows a vegan diet. American Academy of Pediatrics says that a well-planned diet can provide these nutrients too. And I also want to talk about calcium absorption rate. So Human milk, breast milk, has a lower amount of calcium per ounce, but 67% of this calcium is absorbed by the body, versus whole milk, cow's milk, contains a higher amount of calcium per ounce, but only 25 to 30% of the calcium in cow's milk is absorbed by the body. Infant formula is kind of in the middle. That's why there's more calcium in infant formula than in breast milk, because we need to give more calcium in the infant formula because we know not as much of it will be absorbed and utilized from the body. So that being said, if you're still breastfeeding frequently throughout the day past 12 months of life, your calcium level is lower, but they're absorbing more of that calcium, if that makes sense. If any of this is super confusing, please type it in the chat box and I'll try to explain it better if you're not following. So this is a comparison between breast milk and cow's milk. I thought it would be really helpful for you guys to see, for those of you who want to continue breastfeeding and are not sure if you want to introduce cow's milk or a plant-based milk. So breast milk is higher in calories, it's higher in fat, and it's higher in carbohydrates, but it's lower in calcium, lower in protein, and lower in vitamin D. So as long as your child who is breastfeeding takes a wide variety in their diet of nutrient-dense foods and has good sources of calcium, yogurt, cheese, high calcium foods like dark leafy greens, fortified cereals, soybeans, things like that, you just need to be mindful of offering those foods, and you can continue breastfeeding on demand, or whatever your plan is, whatever is working well for you and your baby. Your baby is still getting great nutrition from you. Breast milk nutrition doesn't just like end at 12 months. It's still a valuable source of nutrition, as well as contains a lot of health benefits too. So there's not a need to stop breastfeeding at 12 months because cow's milk is better. That's not how it works. Cow's milk just provides a differing level of nutrient composition. If you're ever concerned about your toddler's diet or they don't eat a wide variety, consult your pediatrician or pediatric nutritionist for advice and help. So I thought this would be a little helpful graphic. What does 700 milligrams calcium look like in a day? I'm going to have like 5 different of these screens. This one is if your child is breastfeeding and given no other milk. So no cow's milk or no fortified plant-based milk. So this is just an example of what that would look like in a day. They would have some instant oatmeal, which is calcium fortified. You'd add some chia seeds and figs, which are also higher calcium foods. A lunch of whole grain bread plus almond butter. Almond butter is higher in calcium than other nut butters. And then dinner was a white bean and kale soup plus blackberries. And then I did add in a half a cup fortified plant-based yogurt to add a little bit more calcium. And then I estimated the child was still getting 24 ounces of breast milk a day, a snack of an orange and half an egg. And then as you can see down in the total, they're going to meet their nutrient needs with that intake. That being said, I know toddlers' appetites fluctuate from day to day. This could be a hard day to get all of this food in them, or it could be easy, just depending on the kiddo. But this is an example of how you could get 700 milligrams of calcium in your baby, still breastfeeding and just offering nutrient-dense meals. So if you want to give a cow's milk, and we're going to stick to 16 ounces of cow's milk in this example, it's just a good example of how they wouldn't have to eat as much food to meet that 700 milligrams of calcium a day. But that being said, neither way is like better than the other, really. So for breakfast, we'll have a waffle, which most waffles are fortified with calcium. Plus, we're going to add some peanut butter. For lunch, we're going to do a tuna salad and some kiwi. And for dinner, chicken, carrots, and blueberries. And for a snack, avocado, 8 ounces cow's milk. Snack, applesauce, 8 ounces cow's milk. So as you can see, it's a lot less volume of food, but we still meet nutrient needs. So maybe if you are not really sure what you want to do, if you want to offer cow's milk or not, if there's a day that they're really not eating very much and you're unsure if they're meeting their nutritional needs, you can offer a small glass of milk to kind of fill in the gap. Okay, so then our third example is, what if we just want to offer yogurt and cheese, but we're not still breastfeeding, we're not going to give cow's milk. We just want to offer dairy in food form. This is an example of how we could meet close to that 700 milligrams calcium in a day. We'd have some almond butter toast using calcium fortified bread, add your fruit of choice. We're going to have cheese and strawberries for a snack. Our second snack will be a yogurt pouch. Lunch will be a black bean burger and pineapple, and dinner is a red lentil pasta with tomato sauce, mozzarella, and mandarin orange. So we have sprinkled dairy throughout our meals, and we are still getting close to that 700 milligrams of calcium without a beverage that is fortified with calcium or breast milk. So we're going to jump into plant-based milk soon. I know that's why you guys are here. We're going to get into plant-based milk super soon. But I wanted to start with this statement from the American Academy of Pediatrics. So it currently recommends whole cow's milk until the age of 2 before considering plant-based milks. And the reason for that is because, like I said at the beginning, we just don't really have enough data to say, hey, a plant-based milk is appropriate because we just don't have the data. It could totally 100% be appropriate. We just don't have long-term studies. So of course, people like the American Academy of Pediatrics groups have to err on the side of caution, and they can't make a guideline without significant research to back it up. If you are choosing a cow's milk alternative, we need to make sure that it has adequate protein, fat, and calories, and it is fortified with calcium and vitamin D, which we'll get into in a minute. A plant-based milk substitution may be appropriate along with additional supplementation if needed to minimize risk of nutritional inadequacy and poor growth. And the little statement at the bottom is raw milk and raw milk products from cows, goats, and sheep can carry harmful bacteria and other germs, and they're not recommended. We also need to make sure that any milk that we're giving our baby is pasteurized. So what does the research say about plant-based milks? These next few slides are just some recent literature that kind of talks about how they're not nutritionally comparable foods. And we're speculating on it because we don't have enough research, like I said before. There have been a few individual cases where children did get sick because they were not consuming a fortified plant-based drink and they were not getting adequate amounts of protein. We need more studies though. So if you're educated on what to look for in a plant-based milk alternative, you will be able to find and choose one that is appropriate for your child and prevents nutrient deficiencies. Milk and dairy products do contribute to meeting nutrient recommendations and may protect against the most prevalent chronic non-communicable diseases where few adverse effects have been reported. This one is another, it reiterates the fact that sometimes they're low in energy, protein, fat, and other nutrients compared with cow's milks. And I want to say there's the bold down here. It does say that some plant-based milks have phytates, which can bind to protein and minerals like calcium and reduce the bioavailability. So like when we talked earlier about the percent of calcium absorbed from breast milk and cow's milk, we don't know the percent absorbed from plant-based milk. We need more studies on it, but also because of the presence of these phytates that will bind to things like protein and calcium and prevent them from being absorbed. So that will be something great to know in the future, like if I give an almond milk, how much of the calcium are they actually getting? And then just a couple more. Plant proteins are generally of lower nutritional quality compared to animal-derived proteins due to limiting amino acids and poor digestibility, like we already talked about. Almond and oat milk provide less than half of the protein provided by a soy, goat, or cow milk. But goat's milk does contain the most fat, so that's great. So these are just a couple more statements about some of the differences in plant-based milks. And I think this is the last one I have. It does say that nutritionally, soy milk is the best alternative for replacing cow's milk in a human diet. The nutrient density and the total number of calories are not as rich as that of cow's milk. Hence, when consuming an almond milk, when consuming almond milk, care should be taken that various essential nutrients are available through other sources in the diet in appropriate quantities. Rice milk and coconut milk are not recommended, but I'm going to get into that in a minute. And then this just I just wanted to make sure you guys knew I was evidence-based and give you guys all of the research. So let's keep going. So current recommendations, the American Academy of Pediatrics says that all plant-based drinks should not be used as a substitute for cow's milk in children less than 24 hours. Some of these beverages do contain added sugars and sweeteners. That being said, we know that we have babies who can't tolerate cow's milk or have an allergy. So what are we to do? And that's what I'm going to help you with. This is just reiterating what they just said. These are the current recommendations from the key national health and nutrition organizations. And as you can see, they don't recommend plant-based milk for the first year of life, and then they only recommend it if medically indicated, dietary reasons only. So if you are going to choose a milk alternative, and I'm going to share some of my preferred ones with you, these are the things that you need to look for on the label. And bonus, you guys are going to get a milk label reading handout sent to your email after this. So you'll be able to have that handout with you when you're choosing a milk alternative. So you want to choose one that's unflavored and does not have added sugars. You want to choose one that is fortified with vitamin D and calcium. And you want to check to make sure the amount of those vitamin D and calcium is adequate to meet their needs paired with their diet. You want to talk with your child's doctor or pediatric dietitian about the milk alternative you are using, because they can differ than cow's milk. We've already talked about that. Read labels, shake plant-based beverages well, and consider any additives in the ingredients list. So, big thing that I want to reiterate is I cannot just recommend an almond milk and just be like, yeah, any almond milk will work. I get a lot of messages where they're like, my pediatrician said I can use almond milk. Okay, but what kind of almond milk? Because plant-based milks are not created equal. There's not a standard guideline they have to follow when they're creating almond milk or oat milk. Like, they can just add whatever they want in it. It can be fortified, it can be not fortified. There's no standard guideline. So this is 3 different brands of almond milk, okay? And as you can see, the nutrition in each 3 of these is completely different. So Silk almond milk has 30 calories. Califia Farms has 35, but then the 3 Trees has 100 calories, okay? It also has 9 grams of fat compared to these 2 only have 2.5 and 3 grams of fat. It has more protein, but then guess what? It's not calcium fortified. So all of this looks great up here, but it only has 66 milligrams of calcium in 8 ounces. So it has less than breast milk and would be very hard to meet their calcium needs if we were relying on this as a calcium fortified option for them. Versus these 2 up here are a little bit lower in calories, a little bit lower in fat and protein, but they're calcium fortified. So they have a huge chunk of calcium in them. But then Silk is also vitamin D fortified, but Califia Farms isn't. So this is why it's so important that we're reading that nutrition label instead of just being like, okay, I'm going to use an almond milk and I'm going to go pick out whichever one I find first. So currently in the data, the preferred options if cow's milk is not tolerated is soy milk is considered second best because of the nutrition composition. And then Ripple pea milk has a comparable nutrient profile, but we don't have any long-term research. So these are the top two that I recommend if a child can't digest cow's milk. But that being said, Ripple pea protein, we don't have the data. As we don't have the data with almond milk, oat milk, all those things, we don't have the data on long-term growth. But if just looking at nutrition composition, Ripple pea is a good third place option. So if you really want to do an oat milk, which I really don't prefer, like this would be like last on the tier for me if I was to choose an oat milk. Because it's really low in protein and it's really low in fat, and it's generally higher in carbohydrates. These are the best options though. The ones I have here, if you want to go oat milk, these are the 2 best options. They have 0 grams added sugar. They are fortified with vitamin D and fortified with calcium, and a little bit different in calories. But like I said, if we're going to give an oat milk, you need to make sure you're giving them plenty of fat and protein in other ways. Best almond milk options, they're also low, so they're super low in carbs, but normally carbs are not an issue that we're running into lack of in a child's diet. So if you're giving an almond milk, make sure that you're giving them plenty of fruit and starchy veggies and grains in their diet. So these are the 2 best almond milk options because they contain 0 grams added sugar and they are fortified with calcium and vitamin D. Protein is low also in this almond milk. So we need to make sure they're getting plenty of protein from a solid food diet. And they're also really low in calories. So we need to make sure that they're not filling up on a very low calorie milk and not getting adequate calories for optimal growth and development. Real quickly, I want to talk about toddler formulas. I'm not sure if any of you guys are interested in using a toddler formula, but if there is anybody, I want to make sure I answer this. Toddler milks or transitional formulas are unnecessary for most children and provide no nutritional benefit over a healthy, balanced eating plan. Toddler formulas are not regulated like infant formula. Okay, so infant formula has to follow a standard nutrition profile to ensure nutritional needs are being met. Toddler formulas don't. They're kind of like plant-based milks. You can put whatever you want in them. You can take whatever you want out. You can have whatever amount of fat, whatever amount of protein, whatever amount of calcium you want in it. There's no standard nutrition profile. So it's really hard to say, yes, your child should stay on a toddler formula, because it depends on what toddler formula they're getting and what's in that toddler formula. And since there's no standard, we can't just broadly say it's appropriate. A couple other things they put in this document about toddler formulas is that these formulas tend to include more sodium, fat, and sugar than an infant formula, and they are not approved to be provided to infants as a suitable milk alternative. So you can't use a toddler formula for under 12 months of age. And most health experts do not recommend toddler milks. Multiple reports state that inclusion of toddler milks does not provide any benefits over a nutritionally balanced diet. They also sometimes contain a lot of added sugar in them, so that would be something you'd want to look into. But honestly, I've never recommended a toddler formula for a client because normally we can meet their nutritional needs with a solid food diet much easier than with a toddler formula, and it's normally a healthier option. So 2 milk options that I definitely recommend to be avoided if possible. I don't recommend rice milk. If you have followed me on Instagram for any length of time, you know that rice is considered a higher arsenic food just due to the contamination of soil and the rice soaking up that arsenic a lot easier than other fruits and veggies. So it's not a good nutrition composition and it's higher in arsenic. So we just recommend avoiding. And then coconut milk is generally not recommended due to its very low protein content and higher saturated fat content. But if you want to choose, make sure to pick an unsweetened version and a fortified option. This is a nice little screenshot. I'm going to send you the link to this so you guys can look at it afterwards if you just kind of want to compare the different milk alternative options. And this is another one. Just if you wanted to look through and see the differences. Some things that I would point out, obviously the almond milks are going to be the lower in calories. Coconut milk is going to be the higher saturated fat. Iron, all pretty similar. Hemp and oat milk have higher iron, but we don't know if it's absorbed well due to the phytates found in the oat milk and the hemp milk. So this is just an overall look at the different milks and how they compare nutritionally. So what if you don't want to do any type of milk, no dairy, nothing, no beverage that's fortified? This is what it would look like. So a chia seed pudding using coconut milk. So we are actually using 1 fortified milk in there, sorry. Tofu and black bean scramble. Mashed sardines paired with broccoli, mandarin oranges, half a cup fortified plant-based yogurt, and half a cup Cheerios. So this one was no dairy products, but we are using a fortified yogurt and a fortified milk for the chia seed pudding. So this is just another way that we can meet 700 milligrams of calcium a day, not providing our child a glass of something throughout the day. So I'm going to go through a few slides of ways to meet toddlers' calcium needs. So we already talked about milk, we already talked about yogurt, breast milk, and obviously cheese. But there are some other foods like tofu, sardines, and fortified breads that are high in calcium. It's kind of hard these days to find a good fortified calcium bread. I feel like people are kind of going away from fortifying bread with calcium, but there are a few brands left that you could use. Broccoli, chia seeds, spinach, and tahini are other great ways to help meet toddlers' calcium needs. Molasses, soybeans, instant oats, and Cheerios are also calcium fortified. So summary, halfway point, Plant-based non-dairy milks aren't currently recommended, but we can use them if needed. We just don't have data to back up a lot of things about them. Some plant-based non-dairy milks have added nutrients such as calcium and vitamin D, which we want to make sure we're choosing if choosing a plant-based milk, but the amounts vary by type and brand. If your child has a milk allergy or lactose intolerance, we want you to work with your primary care physician or your pediatric dietitian to ensure nutritional needs are being met. So let's talk about how to transition really quick. So option one is cold turkey. You can just stop offering formula or breast milk and just start offering cow's milk. That is option one. Is it my favorite way? Not really, but it can be done. And I've heard people do it with their kiddos and there were no negative reactions and everything went well. That being said, I like to do a more slow and gradual process to make sure that we're giving our child time to adjust GI wise from consuming a breast milk or a formula to consuming a cow's milk or a soy milk or a pea protein milk. We just want to give their bodies a little bit of time to get used to a new substance. So option two would be offering the milk in a very similar way to the way you're offering breast milk or formula, and then mixing it. So only starting with a small amount of whatever milk you're choosing and 75% of it being breast milk or formula, and then slowly titrating it until it's 100% cow's milk or whatever milk you're choosing to provide. And you would provide in a bottle in the same way that you provide your breast milk or formula. And then once baby's accustomed to the cow's milk or milk of choice in a bottle, then you start the transition to a cup, straw cup, to an open cup, straw cup, or sippy cup. Option three, if those two ways aren't working for you, is you can start to offer your milk of choice in a totally different way. Some kiddos do well with it being offered in the same exact way, and others don't want to be tricked. Just give it to me in a different way. I know it's something different. So you would offer it in an open cup, straw cup. You can offer it cold, completely different. So Catherine, my very, very good friend, is a pediatric feeding therapist, and she gave me a couple slides to share with you guys about how to offer milk if they're refusing it in the ways we just talked about. She is great for bottle refusal, any issues with chewing solid food, maneuvering solid food, lip, tongue. She's literally great for everything feeding wise that I can't help with as a dietitian. So if you have help, if you need help feeding therapy wise, she's my go-to. You can find her at Kai Kids Feeding on Instagram. So her tips for milk refusal, she wanted to make sure that I talked about when you drink milk from a cup, you're getting more of a sensory experience from it versus when you see it in a bottle. So you see more of it, you smell it, and you taste it more than when it's closed inside of a bottle. So exposure is really important. It's also a new skill to practice moving liquid from the front to the back of the mouth when introducing an open cup or a straw. So practice this skill with small sips, or you can even do a puree or a smoothie. You can keep offering a little milk with each meal in a cup or a straw without pressure to drink. And I think that's really key. When we're using responsive feeding practices, we're never forcing them. We're going at our child's own pace and we're letting them lead the way. We never want introducing solids to be a negative experience. If we create that first negative experience, it's going to be really hard to come back from it. So we're going to start small. Use a really tiny cup like the easy peasy cups, offer only a small amount if they're, refusing it in other ways, and just keep allowing lots of practice in a non-pressuring environment. Like I said before, you could do a yogurt with milk and make a smoothie. That could be a great way to get a child to consume calcium if they're not liking your cow's milk or fortified plant-based milk on its own. You could also, she had a tip to add a tiny bit of milk into water, just to drop it first, see if they'll be okay with that. And if they are okay with doing that, then next time offer a couple more drops, gradually to get them used to the taste and increase exposure. If baby is drinking and spitting, ignore the spitting and let them get messy. So we don't want to scold them or tell them no, because that could be that negative association that we don't want them to have. So you can give them a towel and have them wipe themselves up. And when they're uncomfortable with a mess, they'll be less likely to do it again and again, plus lots of exposure. And then tips for milk refusal. If they're eating 2 or more servings of dairy, they may not need that milk. So that we've talked about that a little bit already. They might not need it. So if they're meeting their nutritional needs with a solid food diet alone, we might not need milk. Last 3 tips from her, I think, is you can give them milk on a spoon. It's something they're comfortable with, easy for them to try, an easy way to try it that way. Give baby time, and you can try thickening the liquid. So who wants to hear my plan? If you guys don't want to hear my plan for Hayes, I am fine with skipping the slide. But if you do, put it in the chat box, or we can jump into questions, because I think I was initially going to share my plan, and now my plan has gone out the window. Okay, people want to hear my plan. So, okay, so Hayes is my interesting baby. So with my first, my 4-year-old right now, Sullivan, we introduced cow's milk at 12 months of age. He had absolutely 0 issues with it. He has always been a yogurt and cheese fanatic. We went to cow's milk because we have the most data on cow's milk, and I knew it would meet his nutritional needs easily. He had no issues with it, and we've been smooth sailing ever since. He's still drinking cow's milk a couple times a day. He definitely doesn't do 16 ounces of milk a day anymore, but he does consume like a yogurt pouch sometimes and cheese. So I know his calcium needs are being met. That being said, for my Hazy, we have introduced dairy in small amounts here and there since we started solids at 6 months, and it has caused him pretty significant constipation every time we've offered it to him. So while I have no qualms about giving my kiddos dairy, it just doesn't seem to be vibing well with Hayes. So we started trialing Ripple pea protein milk. I gave him a couple ounces last week, and he had he didn't have a stomach ache or anything, but his stools were a little bit looser. And so I was like, well, I'm still breastfeeding, and I will still be breastfeeding on demand for as long as he wants. So I know he'll be getting a good, highly absorbable form of calcium from my breast milk, but I know that's probably not enough unless I'm offering some really nutrient dense foods as well throughout the day that contain calcium, which I do. So I wanted to add a fortified milk as well, so that when I'm leaving, I don't have to pump anymore. I don't have to pump milk anymore, and he'll have a substitution. So I tried the Ripple pea, just a couple ounces, and he had some loose stools. So I decided to hold off for a week or 2. I tried soy milk a couple of days ago, and same thing with the loose stools. So I don't know if it's just that his GI tract needs some time, and maybe I should have started with half an ounce instead of 2 ounces both times. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to continue to offer those non-dairy calcium-rich foods that we've talked about already with his diet. I'm going to continue to breastfeed on demand, and I'm going to trial the Ripple pea protein milk again. Probably going to give it a week or 2, just a smaller amount, and see how he does with it. I would like to use soy and Ripple kind of interchangeably if I can get him to tolerate both of them. And then in a couple months, once I'm feeling good with having those as an alternative, I would like to reintroduce dairy. So I'll reintroduce dairy in the form of yogurt and cheese and see if it still causes constipation like it has in the past. And if it doesn't, and he's doing well with it, then I will start to introduce cow's milk again. So my plan, I wanted it to be really succinct and easy for you to follow, but it's really just following his cues and trialing what is going to work best for him. So if you have more questions about that, let me know. We did give the soy milk and the pea protein milk in a bottle for first exposure, and he drank it fine, and he didn't have any issues with it tasting different than breast milk. So that was great. He was receptive to it. And I will stop using the bottle soon and just give it to him in his Dr. Brown straw sippy cup. That will be the plan moving forward. And then I did talk to the pediatrician about my specific case with it causing some loose stools, and he says he sees it quite frequently, where when they're just getting a new type of beverage, it may contribute to looser stools, and that does not necessarily mean it's a food allergy. Constipation alone does not signify food allergy either. We don't have mucousy stools, we don't have blood in our stools. So that being said, I don't think it's a food allergy. I think it's GI tract is just a little bit irritated by it. So that being said, that's my plan right now. And I think that was, Okay, let's do a summary real quick and then I'll answer questions. So choose whole fat milk over reduced fat milk. We introduce gradually to evaluate for tolerance. Large amounts of dairy, like I said, can contribute to constipation, especially if the child is not used to consuming it. So start with 1 to 2 ounces and work your way up. We want to offer the milk alongside snacks instead of with meals. So like I have said over and over again, we want the majority of the nutritional needs to be met from a solid food diet. We don't want to be relying heavily on beverages. So let's stick with milk with snacks and not with meals. If opting for a plant-based milk, we ensure that it's fortified with calcium and vitamin D. And we want to limit to 16 to 20 ounces a day. If you need more assistance, I have some of my previous clients on this recording right now. And so what I do in a one-on-one capacity is I will complete a nutrition assessment on the kiddo to get a rough estimate of how well they're meeting their nutritional needs with diet and whatever milk they're being provided. And then I give suggestions on how we need to improve it, if we need additional supplementation and whatnot. So like kiddos, appetite and intake fluctuate from day to day. So it can be pretty hard to estimate portion sizes. So I always underestimate, but it at least gives us like a kind of a rough estimate of how they're eating and what we need to improve upon. So if you need more assistance in that capacity and just really feel lost, I do have a wait list right now for my one-on-one services. You'll be sent in the follow-up email a little link that you can use to sign up for the waiting list if you feel like that's something that you need. Okay, so that being said, let us get to questions now. I'm just going to start at the top. And I'm going to drink a sip of my drink because that was a lot. Okay. So Kimberly, I believe, is the first question. No, Maya. It says, can I sub cow's milk with goat milk? And is goat milk in formula form similar to liquid form? So if your child is getting a cow's milk based formula or a goat milk based formula, they are already being exposed to that protein in cow's milk or goat's milk. And so if they're tolerating that well, they should tolerate cow's milk or goat milk in its natural form as well. There shouldn't be an issue of tolerance problem. Goat milk is similar in nutritional profile to cow's milk and can be used if you would like. We just don't have a lot of data on goat's milk as well, but it can definitely be an option. Kimberly says, what if my baby won't accept a cup of milk? Does it count if I put it in a smoothie or mix into oatmeal? Absolutely. I think I may have answered that already as we've gone through, but yes, in smoothie form is great for those kiddos, but then I'd also try some of the tips that Catherine lent to me to put in this presentation as well to help get them used to drinking it out of a cup as well. We are doing breast milk and cow's milk. My son is getting more picky at meals. Can they be tested for calcium levels? You know what, Emily, that is a great question. I'm sure that yes, they can be tested. I just don't know if when we have to get kids' labs blood work taken, it can be kind of a traumatic experience. So I don't think that would be my go-to. My go-to wouldn't be like, let's go get calcium levels checked, because our body will adjust our calcium level to keep an equilibrium, I guess is what we say. Like it will keep our calcium levels where they need to be for the most part. I don't know of anybody getting calcium levels checked for an infant or a toddler. What I would recommend is working with a pediatric dietitian, assessing their diet and seeing how close they're getting to that 700 milligrams of calcium a day, and then offering suggestions for improvement or a pat on the back and you're doing great, right? So that would be the first line of action I would take, is working with a dietitian, calculating their nutritional needs, and seeing if they're meeting those. And then, if we need to throw in like an Else toddler shake that's super calcium fortified and contains a little bit of sweetener, just to make sure that we're meeting those nutritional needs, then we can do that too. Okay. Thoughts on camel milk? I know that sounds weird, but I have read great things. So camel's milk, we don't have any data on it. We don't have any sound research. I have looked it up in the past, but I don't have it in the information in front of me right now. So I want to choose my words carefully. I believe camel's milk differs quite a bit than a cow's milk or a goat's milk. I don't remember exactly what macronutrients I was concerned about with camel's milk, but just to err on the side of caution, I would say no, because I don't think we have enough data. And I don't know like the absorption rate of the calcium found in a camel's milk. Is it similar to cow's milk? I don't know. Any alternative milk brands recommended from the UK? That is a great question too, Gabriella. I do not actually even know what milk brands for plant-based milks are available in the UK, but with the milk label reading handout that I will send to you via email, you will be able to use that handout to look at any milk product and assess if it's a good option or not. And Gabrielle, I am happy if you want to send me a couple of brands in email to look at them and tell you if I think they're a good option or not. I'd be happy to do that. If opting for whole cow's milk, is organic milk better? Is Horizon Organic versus Organic Valley versus store brand a better option? So we don't have conclusive data on really that question either. Organic just means like the cows can't have any antibiotic use. But the antibiotic use being an issue is the question. A lot of studies say it's completely safe for the cows to be given antibiotics and for us to consume that milk from them. A lot of data shows that it's completely safe and there's not a concern with like antibiotic resistance. So especially in the economy right now, I say whatever you can afford and feel like is the best. We personally did use Horizon Organic for Sullivan. That is what we have used the past few years. But due to like the rise in cow's milk prices, we just switched to a store brand version lately just because he doesn't drink very much of it. I would say if your kiddo is relying heavily on milk and consuming more than 16 ounces of milk a day, I probably would splurge on maybe an organic or a grass-fed milk option. But like I said, not a ton of data to show that it's really necessary. If any of these questions I'm answering and you still have questions, give me another question then, or type in your additional question. And then the second question, very similar to this, is which brand of cow's milk would you recommend? Organic, hormone-free. Like I said, whatever you can afford. If you want to splurge on organic, cage-free options, you can definitely do so. Okay, let's see what other questions. Do you pump if you leave for long periods so you don't lose your supply? My son nurses on demand, but it is less, so I'm worried about supply because we do both. So before he was 12 months of age, I did pump if I left for long periods. I am actually going on a 3-day work trip in a couple weeks, and I am not quite sure what I'm going to do. I probably will pump and leave some breast milk, but I'm hoping at that point I will be able to give him the pea protein milk or the soy milk as well, so that I'm not having to pump like 30 ounces a day. But for supply purposes, our body will regulate to what our kiddos need. So I wouldn't go drastically from nursing him all day to not pumping or removing milk at all the next day. I probably wouldn't go longer than 5 to 6 hours without removing milk. I have a large milk storage capacity, so I know that my body does pretty well with long periods of time without losing supply if I don't pump or nurse. But that being said, that's just my case. If you are extra concerned about it, I would definitely just be on the safe side and pump and make sure that you're not ever getting engorged or uncomfortable. Lauren had a question about Hayes. So he does eat cheese or yogurt currently, but just having issues with milk. He does not eat cheese or yogurt currently. Every time I offer cheese or yogurt, he loves it and destroys it. But then we deal with a couple days of constipation afterwards where he's uncomfortable. So cheese and yogurt, reintroducing cheese and yogurt will be like my first reintroduction of dairy. Once like I'm going to give him like a week or two, and then we're going to start offering cheese and yogurt, see how he does with it. And then offer, if he does okay with it if he does okay with the cheese and yogurt, then we'll start offering him whole cow's milk. If we decide to do option 2 of your milk transition options, mix cow's milk with breast milk until only on cow's milk, how long should the transition last? Well, I would like to say like only offering 1 or 2 ounces to begin with until we're meeting like 4 to, well, it depends on how much milk you are deciding you want to give your baby a day. If you want to give them 16 ounces of cow's milk a day, then that transition might last a couple weeks until they're getting that 16 ounces a day. We're going to start with 1 to 2, and we're going to gradually taper up until we meet that 16 ounces. So however long that might last, evaluating for tolerance. So really not like a clear-cut option on that. You can do 1 to 2 ounces the first day if they're doing well. Do 2 to 3 ounces the next day. If they're doing well, 3 to 4 ounces the next day. If you're starting to notice constipation, then slow it down. Only do 3 ounces for a couple of days and then bump it up. So hopefully that answers that. I will be sending you guys my favorite straw and open cup and sippy cup recommendations. I don't know if I technically call them sippy cups because they're more of the spouts in like the hydro flask type bottles. But I will be sending you my Amazon list with some of my favorite cup recommendations. Snacks that have calcium if you won't eat yogurt or cheese. So the snacks that I put in the examples were some great ones. I'll go back so you can see that. Almond butter toast with a calcium fortified bread. You can do an edamame smash on toast. You could do hold on, did I miss it? Hold on. Tofu is a great little snack that you can whip up really quick. Cheerios are calcium fortified. Chia seed pudding. All of these snack ideas that I gave in here are good calcium food sources for a baby that won't eat cheese or yogurt. I'm going to go back to the other slide too. Here we go. That one has the tuna salad could be a great snack with calcium in it. A calcium fortified waffle with peanut butter. Instant oatmeal is calcium fortified. If you want to try a plant-based yogurt and see if they'll eat that instead, eggs have some in there, white beans have some in there, mandarin oranges have some in there. Adding almond butter to everything, do a smoothie with almond butter. Yeah, so those would be some suggestions I have. All right, let's see what's next. What to do. Hold on, I missed something. Okay, hold on, I am missing where I started. What to do when baby has already shown signs of dairy intolerance. I've been continuing to introduce with variety, but sparingly. Should I try and enter cow's milk at all or jump straight to getting tested for allergy? If you're noticing like blood in stool or mucus in stool, those are some classic signs that yes, it's a dairy allergy and not just an intolerance. And I would recommend testing for a food allergy. That being said, some allergists don't really want to do that. They just want you to remove cow's milk for 6 months and then reintroduce 6 months from the last reaction is the general guideline. So it's definitely up to you. I would talk to your pediatrician about that and kind of like, it would depend on what signs you're seeing of dairy intolerance. And that would kind of guide my decision making. I do not eat dairy in my diet. I miss it so much. I will reintroduce it every now and then. And I don't notice a difference with him if I eat dairy or not. But I think just like knowing what it does to him when I give it to him in solid food form, I'm like always super worried that if he gets too much calcium via my breast milk, too much dairy via my breast milk, like it will cause issues. So I don't avoid it for a legitimate purpose, really, honestly. I should add it more into my diet because I don't think it makes a difference for him. But I don't know. I think I'm just a little bit on I've seen him be constipated so much that I'm just a little over cautious. Cow's milk in a bottle is okay during the transition. Yes, Caitlin, that is okay. Jennifer says currently offering breast milk and cow's milk with a total amount of both combined be 16 to 24 ounces. No, if you're offering breast milk, there's no limit on the amount of ounces of breast milk to provide, because breast milk has a lower calcium concentration than cow's milk. So you would probably need to offer more if you're just relying on the breast milk and the cow's milk to meet their calcium needs. We would just want to make sure that cow's milk, we're not giving more than 16 to 20 ounces a day. Is goat cheese a good stepping stone to trying dairy after intolerance? Yeah, definitely. Goat cheese, there is some literature that shows that goat's milk products are easier to digest because of the protein content being a little bit more broken down. So yeah, absolutely could try that. Mona says, my 1 year and 1 day old is having swallowing issues and she doesn't eat that much solids. We are working with a feeding therapist, so I feel like we will be continuing to give her formula. What brand of toddler formula do you suggest and how much? So I would not recommend a toddler formula, to be quite honest with you. I would just continue with the infant formula that you're on, or discuss with your pediatrician if they want you to adjust to a different one. I cannot give brand name recommendations of toddler formulas because, like I said, every single toddler formula is completely different in nutrition composition. So I would prefer to stick to an infant formula that I know is regulated and has like appropriate composition if we're only using it for a couple months until we get them transitioned onto something different. But that being said, that is a very individualized question, and I cannot answer because I don't have a specific medical history with your child. Ashley says, thoughts on cow's milk before nap or bed, or just try to stick to with snacks. He's used to breast milk before bed and some naps. It can be fine to use cow's milk to help them settle as you would a breast milk or a formula. The difference is cow's milk, they recommend like you wipe their teeth off before they go to sleep. Cow's milk has a different type of sugar in it than breast milk does, so higher risk for dental caries. That being said, if we're just using it for the transitional period, I wouldn't be overly concerned if they have cow's milk and fall asleep with it, as long as we're doing like good teeth brushing throughout the day. Larissa says, my daughter is 11 and a half months, exclusively breastfed. I have about 400 ounces of breast milk in the freezer. As of this week, she's breastfeeding morning and night and gets her daytime breast milk in a straw cup at daycare. Let's see what the rest of the question says. I can't read it all. Why can't I read it all? My question is, should I give her pure breast milk once I'm weaned from the daytime feeds, or would you mix with whole milk to extend how long she's able to get breast milk? I think it's totally up to you. There would be benefits to both scenario. I think if you have plenty of it, using it as a transitional tool would be great. Yeah, I mean, either way, giving her lots of breast milk up front and then switching to cow's milk, or prolonging that breast milk until later and so she gets it for a longer period of time, both ways are fantastic, and there's no data that shows one way is better than the other. So Kelly, we already talked about the sippy cups. I prefer the soft spout, but I don't know feeding therapist wise which one they would recommend, hard spout versus soft spout. So I would definitely refer that to Catherine at Kai Kids Feeding. She would be great to ask about that because I honestly don't really recommend sippy cups unless we have to. So I don't have personal experience with a hard spout or a soft spout, and I don't know which one is preferred oral development wise. How fast or how slow should transitioning from breast milk to whole milk go? So I kind of already answered that previously with somebody else's questions. It really depends on how the kiddo's tolerating it and your goal amount of cow's milk to be provided in a day. If a 12-month-old is still nursing on demand, would you need to pump or replace it when they would normally nurse, or just offer whole milk at those times? It just depends on the kiddo. If they're like, if you're stopping nursing and they are wanting that cow's milk or plant-based milk alternative at the times you normally nurse, then obviously you can give it to them then. But if they're okay with kind of adjusting their schedule and getting their cow's milk or fortified milk between meals with their snack, then that's what I would do. Stephanie says, when to start transitioning to cow's milk from formula? Do we start exactly at 1 year birthday, or can we start a little earlier? I'm just almost out of formula, so that's why I asked. So I'm trying to see if I should buy some more. I generally recommend really close to 12 months. In Canada, they say that you can start transitioning at 9 months. In US, they say not before 12 months. I would say if you're like a week or two away and you're only going to start with an ounce or two here and there, that would be fine. I just wouldn't go more than like 4 to 8 ounces of cow's milk a day before the age of 12 months. And that's just a personal preference. That's obviously not a detailed guideline that's out there somewhere. We waited till 12 months to begin introducing whole cow's milk. Will you please share the reintroduction to dairy on your Instagram feed? This is so helpful. Yes. Oh, my reintroduction for Hayes. Yes. I wanted to share my personal story and my personal plan with you guys first, because you purchased this course, and kind of talk you guys through what I was doing before I shared with everybody else, because I felt like you guys deserved to know the information more because you signed up for the class. So I will share on my Instagram feed. Amy, thanks for being real about your feelings as well, because that is so hard. Yes. I'm kind of all over the place with my plan. So I just wanted to share that there is no like one specific plan that's going to work well for everybody. We just need to look at that full day's intake and make sure that 700 milligrams of calcium is close to being met. Brianna says, you said you wouldn't recommend coconut milk with saturated fat. Is that something we should be limiting with babies? Brianna, thank you for asking that question. I almost went into it on that slide. So saturated fat does not need to be restricted in the first 2 years of life. That because breast milk has saturated fat into it, and saturated fat is helpful in brain development. So I think the reason that they recommend that the coconut milk be avoided is because normally people are using a fortified milk for longer than 2 years, right? They're going to be using it when they're 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and saturated fat is recommended to be limited after the age of 2. So I think that's why the recommendations are in place. Coconut milk, in all reality though, isn't that great of an option, and it's hard to find it fortified with calcium and vitamin D. So that being said, if you want to use cow's milk in coconut milk in moderation, it's okay. It's just not a great option. I would prefer the Ripple, soy, or even the almond milk probably above the coconut milk. I do like to use coconut milk if we are having a child who is struggling with weight gain. It can be a really great way to boost calories. Here, I'm going to try to pull up the coconut. This one doesn't even have coconut milk on it. Energy is good, but not better than whole milk. Protein is incredibly low. Fat is higher, but not as high as whole milk. And it's more of a saturated fat versus whole milk is a differing. It's not as high in saturated fats. As you can see, 4.55 versus 5. Cholesterol 0, carbs a little bit lower, calcium, iron, vitamin D is a little bit lower. So I don't know what brand they used for here, but most coconut milks that I have seen at the grocery store are not vitamin D and calcium fortified. So whichever one they chose here, they don't have brands, could be an appropriate option. I think most organizations, American Academy of Pediatrics, probably are just following the general consensus on saturated fat needing to be limited in a children's diet over 2 years of age. Ashley says, do you have any tips on weaning night feeds? I'm in process of weaning from the pump and he'll wake up 1 time throughout the night. Okay, Ashley, I cannot help you with that question at all. I'm not there yet. We're not really weaning night feeds yet. And sleep is not my specialty. As you guys know, I posted on Instagram. I am working with a sleep consultant to help get Hayes into a better sleep situation, adjusting wake windows, all of those things. So I don't have great tips for weaning from night feeds. The way I weaned Sullivan from night feeds is I went away for 3 days and my husband took over bedtime routine. And then when I came back, my husband had just taken on that role and I just didn't intervene at night. So that's what I did for my oldest, but I think it depends on your child's temperament, y'all's relationship. It's super individualized how that's going to work and how your child reacts to it. Lauren says, so mucus and blood are still good indicators for dairy intolerance after solids have been started. We have been dairy free since December and she's currently 9 months and I'm looking into slow reintroduction, but her only previous symptoms were mucus and blood and no rash or anything else. Yes, mucus and blood are pretty good indicators that it's a dairy allergy. So general guidelines are reintroduced 6 months after last reaction to that food allergy, but it's individualized to the child and needs to be discussed with either your pediatric allergist or your pediatrician. And Jennifer says, currently offering about 10 ounces of cow's milk and 10 ounces of breast milk. Planning to offer breast milk as long as they'll take it. I didn't want to overdo it, but still wanted to, can't see the end of this question, but still wanted to make sure baby is adequate amounts. Is Jennifer, that question is very individualized because it depends on what they're getting in their diet as well. So if they're getting 10 ounces of cow's milk, I'd have to do the calculation. That would be a significant amount. That would be around 400 milligrams of calcium, right? Plus they're getting 10 ounces of breast milk, which would be around 100. So we're talking 500 milligrams of calcium, rough estimate is coming from beverages alone. So that would mean only 200 milligrams need to come from solid food. So if they're getting 200 milligrams of calcium from solid food, that would be adequate. Like I said, individualized. How do you suggest going from on-demand breastfeeding to stopping breastfeeding? These are just very individualized to your baby's temperament. Some kiddos do great with weaning from breastfeeding, and it's so easy to replace a breastfeeding session with a snack and a distraction. And other kiddos just really, really want that breastfeeding session because it's a bonding session. And not only is it nutrition, but it's comfort and it's attachment to mama. And so what I always recommend, whatever you plan to do it slow, do it gradual, and really follow their cues to make it a non-negative experience. Melissa says how to get a boob enthusiast to be more interested in solid food over the boob. So that is just, honestly, that was my first, that was Sullivan. We really had to focus on providing some distractions if he was trying to nurse right before we were going to offer solid food. Some fun distractions, maybe a new toy or a set toy bin that can only come out to replace the nursing session, to hold him off so that he wouldn't be overly full from breast milk before offering that solid food. That's kind of the first strategy that we took. So not denying him the breastfeeding, but not offering and distracting for the majority of the times he asked for it until we got to a place where I was comfortable with how many nursing sessions he was doing, and making sure he was still consuming more solid food over milk feeds. That being said, breast milk is still always beneficial. So it's not something bad that your kid's still getting a lot of breast milk. We just want to make sure that with that amount of breast milk, he's still getting enough solid food to meet nutritional needs and he's not nutrient deficient. Is it possible for baby to have intolerance or not handle milk but tolerate other forms of dairy? Yes, because cheese and yogurt are fermented dairy products, which are broken down, so they're easier for baby to digest over just plain old cow's milk. So they may do great with cheese and yogurt, but you introduce cow's milk and their tummy has a little bit of trouble with it. And they may not be able to consume a large amount of it at one time. May need to be something that's just given in a few ounces every day. Is some constipation or any other symptoms normal during transition? Yeah, some constipation can be normal with any milk that you're offering just because it's a new food that they've never tried before. So that's why we just recommend a gradual introduction. What are your thoughts on lactose-free whole cow's milk, such as Fairlife? Does it matter if your baby doesn't have an intolerance? No, lactose intolerance is really incredibly rare in children under 3 years of age because lactose is the predominant milk sugar in breast milk. So for a child to not be able to tolerate lactose is a very rare disease, and it's pretty life-threatening because obviously our babies are designed to be fed breast milk. And so their bodies have the ability to break down lactose because breast milk has high concentrations of lactose. So unless your child's an older toddler, like 3, 4, 5, that's where we start to see lactose intolerance become a problem. And that's when maybe a lactose-free milk would be appropriate for them, but generally not needed when first introducing at 12 months. thoughts on A2 milk. It can be an option if your child's not doing well with whole cow's milk, but not having like mucus and stools or bloody stools or no like significant indications. Maybe you could try A2 milk. We don't have a lot of data on it. It's just supposed to be a little bit better for babies to digest. I don't have any cons against it though. Could definitely be something to trial. Okay, guys. Woo! I got through all the questions. Okay. Wow, that was a lot. Okay. So we still have like 15 more minutes. I am happy to answer any further questions that you guys might have. If not, then I guess we're good to go and I'll end the recording. I would love any last insights. Was this helpful? Do you feel like your questions are answered? Do you feel like you have a good plan in place? Would love some feedback. Yes, you will be able to come back to watch later. I have recorded this whole session and it will be sent out within 24 hours after this live ends. So yes, you can reference this recording whenever you'd like. Yeah, and if baby is eating well, can milk be at meals, not snacks? Any drawback? If baby is eating well, yeah, you can offer milk at meals, not snacks. I would tend to offer it at the end of the meal though. But if you're not noticing any difference in solid food consumption with milk given at the same time, I guess that's definitely your personal choice. Jessica, thanks for hopping on to watch the parts that you could watch, and I am glad the recording will be helpful for you. Okay. Okay, so far, oh, somebody's sending me coffee money. Thank you. I'm gonna go get some coffee now after this. Melissa says thoughts on water consumption. We only offer water and milk to my kiddos, and so I kind of aim for around 20 ounces of water a day, depending on how much milk Sullivan. Uh-oh, somebody muted. Sorry, somebody unmuted themselves. So, water consumption, I just recommend always having water on hand. And like if they need something and it's not time for breast milk or milk, having the water on hand. But like I said, water needs kind of depends on the height and weight of the child and what else they're consuming throughout the day. Thank you so much for all this information. So helpful during a transition where I feel like there is not much guidance. This helps me feel like there's just not just one right way. Yes, so many different ways. I really hope you guys feel more confident. I know that there's not like a one size fits all. So it is a little bit more complicated to figure out what works best. But you guys are all going above and beyond to educate yourself. So I'm sure your kiddos will be fantastic. And you'll find ways to meet those nutrient needs in an easy way. Okay. Very helpful, not as overwhelmed, especially with the whole transition from the bottle too. Great. I definitely recommend if any of you guys are having issues with your child not accepting milk in an open cup, straw cup, in a different form, reach out to Catherine at Kai Kids Feeding. She can give you guys some helpful tips or suggestions that we may have not covered today. Okay, I do not see any more questions. Thank you guys for joining and being interactive. Really thankful for you all. And I guess I'll see you on Instagram. If you follow me there, we'll chat soon. And you will get this recording as soon as I have downloaded it and sent it out. So make sure you're checking your email. Okay, everybody, thanks so much. We will be closing the chat room now. Oh my gosh, somebody said they love me. I love you too, Jessica. You guys are so kind. I really appreciate it. Okay, see you guys later. Emily, if you want to go ahead and